Yes. So thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you for this today's session, a special session on another global Udan series, which is very important, called as Gateway to Global Finance, Opportunities in IFSC's Gift City. And truly honored and privileged to welcome our Honorable Past President, C. Aniket Talati, who's given his consent to be here today, speak his experience, and who hails from Ahmedabad, so none other than the place where we have the Gift City, the Gift IFSC. And I'm sure with his experience, vast experience, he'll able to share truly the opportunities which members are looking at. Also joined is the council colleague, the deputy convener of this international trade WTO, and one of the most experienced council members, the chairman of Accounting Standard Board, CA Sanjeev Singhal. Thank you so much for joining here on this webinar again. And the series between two of us, which we thought and started, the Global Udan series, I think it's a huge success. There's the third program of this series, and we have regular weekly series being organized for members just to know different areas, different a perception coming out from the traditional practice, looking into the opportunities which can be globally explored, more particularly in terms of the global capability centers, which now are coming to India in terms of the financial services. And very happy to mention that two of the important speakers, the panelists today, Himanshu Jain ji and Akshat, thank you so much. They've joined from Ahmedabad, from the IFSC office itself, being AGM, and of course, Akshat being the manager in IFSC CA. Thank you so much for joining. And Rituja Soni, she'll be moderating. Thank you, Rituja, for moderating this important session. Why I say important? Because when we have Aniket, Sanjeev ji, and the team from IFSC, this actually, you can say it's a collaboration of expertise, experience, and opportunity, which has come together. So just to give you a little background on the IFSC, which established in 2020 April under the IFSC Act, and none other than Aniket ji also was very instrumental when he was the president that led the institute, got an opportunity to get the leadership in the IFSC and also the BATF recommendations which were there. ICI was part of the team, then Aniket ji was there as president, and then later on, our Honorable Past President Ranjit Agarwal took over. So the Ministry of Finance notified the bookkeeping, accounting, and taxation and financial crime compliances as financial services in January 2024. So this basically, I think, an opportunity, new avenue of chartered accountant in the global domain. And in response, IFSC CA constituted an expert committee, like I mentioned, under the leadership of Aniket ji, and led to shape the GIFT IFSC into a global hub for finance and accounting services. So based on the recommendation, the BATF regulations were drafted and shared for stakeholders' input, with ICI playing a key role. A lot of seminars, workshops, committee engagements, other professionals actively contributed to building a robust regulatory and service ecosystem. So this has marked a significant opportunity for chartered accountants to expand, like I said, their global footprint through GIFT IFSC. So again, I once again welcome all of you, and truly an opportunity to discuss about the opportunities, and especially in the IFSC GIFT City, new areas of avenue for chartered accountants looking out of the traditional practice, creating a vertical within the firm, consolidating the firms, creating opportunities for themselves, creating their own global capability centers, having the pool of talent which they already possess, or creating a new pool of talent, having the cost advantage which the country has. I think this is a real opportunity for us to listen to experts today. Thank you, one and everyone joining today. I would now request our Honorable Council colleague, CA Sanjeev Singhal ji, the Deputy Convener of International Trade WTO, to share his experience, vast experience in GCC and IFSC GIFT City.
Thank you, Abhay. Thanks a lot for your kind words, and I'm immensely happy and grateful to my president, Sri Aniket Talati ji, whom I go so well that I mentioned in the beginning of the program, and the program has not started, that I go to Ahmedabad only when he is there and he is available, so that I can have a cup of tea with him. Such a loving and affectionate president, and very, very knowledgeable. And as Abhay rightly mentioned, he was instrumental, in the developments that we are talking today. His pioneering efforts led to the recognition of ICI at the GIFT City. He was thoroughly involved. Rather, he led the formulation of these policies, and of course, the contribution of IFSCA and the support and which they provide to ICAI, including this program, which will be, where Mr. Himanshu Jain, Mr. Akshat Ganeriwala are the speakers, and the entire leadership of IFSCA, supports ICAI, and both these great institutions work with each other. And friends, as Abhay Chajarji, the convener, the honorable convener of this group, rightly mentioned that this is the sunrise area. If I have to talk about three sunrise areas, these are AI, sustainability, and GCCs. And each competing with each other, that which one will be more dominant. And there is ample scope in all the three areas for our chartered accountants. So when we talk about that, gateway to the global finance opportunity in IFSC's Gift City, I will also say that this finance will not be limited to the traditional meaning of finance. This will also incorporate sustainability, because now a lot of GCCs are required in sustainability. That's an evolving field, and there are hardly any skilled manpower which is available. And India is a place where there are exclusive universities which are set up to cater to the manpower requirement on sustainability. Similarly, AI, India is taking the lead. When we talk about GCC, we talk about in all possible areas and go beyond the finance as well, because now the chartered accountants they possess very diverse skills. They are leading the sustainability functions. They are leading the AI functions also. So it's an integrated bouquet of services that the chartered accountants can render. And India is the home for GCCs. World's more than 50% of the GCCs are in India, and our Honorable President, say Charanjit Singh Nandaji, has set up a special group to deal with the GCCs, to look at the opportunities in GCCs. And there also we were talking that it's not that we already have half and only half is left. But there are so many services, where GCCs can be set up. And right now, companies are not thinking on those lines. So once we demonstrate that how India is capable of rendering services in those areas, I believe that the opportunities will increase multifold. So we are in safe hands today, led by our Honorable Past President Aniket Talati ji, Rituja as a moderator, and the two expert speakers from IFSCA. So now I would like to, invite our past president and a good friend, Fas Aniket Talati ji, for his keynote address, and then that will be followed by the speakers and the moderator. Thank you very much, Abhay Bhai, for conceptualizing this kind of a series. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sajeev bhai. Over to you, Aniket sir.
Thank you so much, and very good afternoon to all the members. And first and foremost, to the chairman and vice chairman and my dear friends in the council, Abhay Chajarji and Sanjeev Singhal. Such a pleasure to see both of you, of course, virtually, and look forward to seeing both of you physically. But let me compliment the thought process. Look, I think everything in life begins with a vision. And I think the vision that you have shared in this new council term and this council year, the Prime Minister came up with Udan, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik, so that people who are not able to afford a flight, जो हवाई की चप्पल पहनता है वो एयरक्राफ्ट में जाके बैठे, वो उनका सपना था. और आई थिंक इन दैट सेंस ग्लोबल उड़ान सीरीज is nothing but an effort by two of my friends, colleagues, and now our council members, Abhay ji and Sanjeev bhai, कि उड़े देश का आम अकाउंटेंट और एसोसिएट मेंबर. और वो सिर्फ उड़े नहीं, वो ग्लोबल उड़ान भरे, क्योंकि उड़ान तो चलता है सिर्फ इंडियन डोमेस्टिक फ्लाइट्स में. But look at the vision that these two gentlemen have brought for our profession, that our members should now take flight, and take flight make India not just the center for compliances that we do for our clients, for the work that we do for Indian domestic companies, but how can Indian chartered accountants start giving services to the world? And I think, as the Honorable Prime Minister has envisioned, that India should be the accounting hub for the world. I think this is a step in that direction. So my heartiest compliments to you again, Abhayji, Sanjeev Bhai, Monica ji, the secretary, and the entire committee who have conceptualized this wonderful series of Global Udan. I personally feel that this shows that the institute has its vision in the right place, and we are with safe hands with the council members who can very clearly appreciate what is the vision for our profession and professionals. I think Abhay ji enlightened us in his opening address, and I think Sanjeev Bhai spoke about the sunrise sectors. And I think what beautifully somebody else could put it that three areas AI, and I think that's the larger technology domain, sustainability, and GCCs. I think if we focus on these three areas, these all three will take you in that global Udan and take you international. So my compliments for this vision, and I'll try and share my little bit of information that I can based on my experience of having worked in certain international jurisdictions, and also as mentioned by both of you, having got the opportunity to work at IFSC by both the previous chairperson there and the current chairperson and the entire team at IFSC and Gift City who got the ICI involved. And yes, it was a matter of privilege that not only that as my president in my term, we could sign a MOU between ICI and IFSC as well as ICI and Gift City. But the opportunity that I got as president to interact with the Honorable Prime Minister of India, the one and only Narendra Modi ji, was nowhere else but in the Gift City and in the Gift building which is there. Both the colleagues of IFSC who are present, and I call them colleagues because though we may have different organizations, but both are dear friends and, of course, extremely astute professionals, regulators. But at the same time, I can say this without even thinking twice or mincing words. One would have interacted with so many regulators. And I think if you meet with gentlemen like Akshat ji or Himanshu Bhai, you will notice that it is not a regulator that you are meeting. You are in fact meeting a facilitator. And I think that is what sets apart IFSC. You have RBI, you have SEBI, you have CAG. At the institute, we deal with multiple regulators. But I think this is one regulator that I found. I think with the team that we have, such as Akshat ji and Himanshu Bhai and everybody else who's there at IFSC and GIFT, the kind of welcome that they have for industry, for financial services, and the willingness to solve issues and queries if they rise in any journey, I think it is tremendous. So let me just, yes, of course, mention that I had the privilege that the MOU got signed. But let me take you back to sometime in May, couple of years back, exactly maybe 2 years ago. We are in April, when I got an invitation that the Honorable Prime Minister would be visiting Gift City, and some 10, 15 of us would have the opportunity to be in a hall and discuss the opportunities of how Gift could become more successful and, of course, more attractive. And from the accounting side, I was to be there. Of course, before the meeting, I had a small briefing where all of us participants were told that it is going to be only interactive and you must give suggestions. And kudos to the Honorable Prime Minister. He was there largely to listen. I think it was all of us talking and him listening. But what I was given to understand as a briefing before the meeting was, and you will all recollect, honorable members who are listening to this webinar live, in 2017, the Honorable Prime Minister made a clarion call that today we have global large firms. And I think they have done a phenomenal job in terms of setting up these larger firms globally. And his vision was that can we also aspire that there may be larger global firms, but can we also have large Indian firms which are able to service not just the Indian market, but are able to truly represent globally. And of course, I think over the years, all the presidents, the various councils that have been, we've tried to live to that vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, make enabling changes. It may be networking guidelines, it may be changes to the code of ethics, and so much more that we are trying to give the opportunity to Indian firms to grow and collaborate and become larger. But I think on that moot point of when we met the Prime Minister, again, his vision is very clear that how do you build firms of scale who are not just doing accounting compliance work in India for Indian clients, but can actually serve the globe. And I think that is where the germination of this idea happened. And subsequently, of course, with the help of the authority at IFSC, which led this transformation and began the change in the form of an expert committee which got constituted, and eventually the regulations which we have in the form of the BATF, which came out. I remember as the president, I got the unique opportunity to, of course, first work with DEA, with DOR, with so many other parts of our government in the finance ministry to make these regulations pass. Because, as all of you will be aware, Today we are talking about IFSCA, the International Financial Services Center Authority. And world over, wherever you have a financial service area or a authority or center, it may be in the Middle East, it may be in anywhere other islands of the world. Largely, financial services are what? It's banking, it's stock, so it is investments and capital markets, insurance. But look at the vision that Indian IFSC has. We have in this country where you have leasing, aircraft as well as ship leasing, which was brought in and said, yes, it is a critical part of the financial service center. Then the realization was that today, if London or any other global center is recognized as financial capital, it's because it has the talent pool available. And therefore, you have university guidelines where branch campuses of international universities are allowed. And I think kudos to IFSC. And I think this is where India of today is different, where we don't follow what the world is doing, but we set our own trend. And the IFSC said that why don't we have separate regulations recognizing bookkeeping, accounting, taxation, and of course, financial crime, which is what we refer to as forensics also, but it includes AML, etc. All of that and package it into one and create it as a separate form of service which can be provided by Indian accountants and as well as global accountants. I think that is where the journey began. Of course, I had the privilege to chair the expert committee and then be a part of the final report also, which was issued, and subsequent regulations which are there. And to all the members who are listening live, I think this is a unique opportunity. I will not like to eat into the content that the two fellow speakers will tell us. I'm sure they will have a presentation and show you what are the criteria, how you can come, how you can make a BATF entity. But as a past president of the institute, I can only give a clarion call in support of my two council colleagues, Abhayji and Sanjeev Bhai, who are both present here and have set the tone that let's imagine big. Let us look at not just Indian opportunities, let's look at global opportunities. Let us not just be satisfied by servicing clients here. Believe me, if we are able to do the accounting work with a separate set of standards for small companies, then an IFRS and an India standard, when we have a GST Act, which is, of course, one of the most, I would not like to say complicated, but one of the most challenging to implement, and yet we are able to do it in a domestic India. If you move and start doing accounting services in US, in UK, in Australia, and Canada, believe me, the indirect tax law there is a lot less complicated. And you are able to deliver services there. More importantly, if you talk to any global organization, and I still represent ICI at multiple forums, and when I go to these international forums, and I'm sure Abhayji and Sanjeev Bhai will bear me out on this, the discussion globally, it may be Australia, Canada, or US, is they just don't have enough accountants. There aren't enough people getting into accounting. And therefore, there is a shortage, there is a vacuum. And of course, with us, we have the opportunity to provide and fulfill this vacuum globally. Some of this vacuum, if we don't grab this opportunity, may be filled up with technology. And therefore, I think it is important that we take the step forward. To all those who are tuning in, let me say this, and I can say this now as I'm not a council member, that it is not Abhay ji or Sanjeev bhai who will get you some work. यहाँ कोई empanelment नहीं है. आप सोचोगे कि मैं एक फॉर्म भरूंगा मेरी फर्म का और इंस्टीट्यूट उस empanelment को लेके मुझे ग्लोबली काम दिलाएगी, वो नहीं होता है. It's an international market where we have to outshine ourselves. Our advantage as Indian accountants is the work that ICI has done over the years and decades to establish the brand Indian Chartered Accountant, the CA India, as I would like to call them. They are already established and recognized. So your recognition is already there of your qualification. Second, you will now have to move forward and see how we are able to use this brand of Indian CA India, which is there, and then cater the global markets. You cannot expect that Abhayji and Sanjeev will open a firm and they will then distribute work, because foreign companies, foreign accounting firms will not come to them and say, we want to give you work. They will look for who is the best. They know Indian accountants are one of the best. But I think it is therefore for us also an important aspect to reskill ourselves, to change the habit of how we as accountants have always functioned sitting in our office and client coming to us, and changing our mindset and saying, now how do I go global? How do I go international and offer my set of services where I am considered as best in the world and become solution providers to the world? So very important that all of us must change our mindset. If you are here and logging into this Udan series, let me say this: it is not, the institute can show you the opportunity, the institute can create those opportunities for you. But if you expect that they will spoon feed those opportunities for you. I don't think anybody, though the council members in their heart may want to do it, it is beyond them to do it, is what I'm trying to tell you. And therefore, I think an important aspect is what they are doing must be appreciated in the right earnest. They can skill you, they can show you this opportunity, but at the end of the day, it is us who have to go and grab these global opportunities. And if you do it, I'm telling you, there is a huge market available. Sanjeev Bhai referred to the GCC market. India has majority share. More than 50% of GCCs are coming here. And every week we have a new GCC coming. If you talk of these GCCs, 30% of the workforce in GCCs is FP&A. These are people in finance and accounts. And therefore, if you have maybe 20 lakh people who are doing GCC work, 30 lakh people, 50 lakh people, 30% of them are coming either from our profession or our sister concerns or from just basic accounting background. So a huge market to be tapped. And I think we have just scratched the surface with GCCs, with the top 500 companies coming. When the next companies, the next 5,000 companies come into India, imagine the opportunity that will be there. So many firms today globally are getting private equity. And I think it's a discussion which has globally begun, where many firms are raising capital, getting themselves valued, and getting money raised. And now they are trying to professionally run their management. Those firms are also shifting a lot of their work to India. So they may be doing an audit of a company in UK, but a lot of the work paper preparation is happening here in India. They may be filing a VAT return or a sales tax return for US, UK, Canada, or Australia. But majority of the data pooling and of course the analysis will be done from here in India. And that is where I think GIFT and IFSC in particular come into play. It's a wonderful area. For those of you who have not visited Gujarat, I think Mr. Bachchan used to say this, Kuch din to bitaiye Gujarat mein. And being a Gujarati, I would say to all the people who are there online, Kuch din bitaiye Gujarat mein, Gandhinagar mein, GIFT City mein. Look at the masterpiece that the canvas that is coming up there. World class infrastructure. You have a metro which goes right into GIFT City. You have roads which probably are not there in any part of the country. You have buildings which are category A, grade A buildings, and of course a wonderful regulator for you to work with. And when you open up there as a BATF center, you have tax exemptions, you have so much more, and you can claim to the world that you're coming from a regulated zone. I think that itself, working out of GIFT gives you so much more credibility. So I'm sure the speakers after me will tell you about how you do this and what are the exact benefits which are available. But what I can definitely say in this Global Udan series, the opportunity that has been given to me by the committee, especially Abhay Bhai and Sanjeev Bhai, is that the opportunity is out there. The market is there for sure. It is for us to rethink, do I still want to just keep doing what I have been doing in practice for so many years? Or do I want to look at newer pastures, greener areas? And for those of you who are looking to do this, for those of you who have that panache, that niche, and of course, that willingness and fire in the belly to capture newer markets, I think it's a great opportunity. Tune into this, the next 1.5 hours that you will have with the two experts. Have your questions ready. And of course, then look at how you can strategize and take this global Udan, which the committee is giving you, service your clients in India, but also look at servicing the world. And let's all together try and see how we can make the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister of converting India, which has already established itself as a technology back office of the world, which has established itself as the pharmacy of the world, making the largest therapeutics and pharmaceutical products and generics in the world. Can we now see the third wave and establish ourselves as the accountants, tax consultants of the globe? I'm sure if 4.5 lakh chartered accountants start thinking about it, and maybe a few thousand of us start implementing it, the future is for us to capture. Thank you very much once again to all of you for inviting me, to my chairman of the committee, to the vice chairman, Rutuja, who I'm sure is going to do a great job in making sure that the moderation happens. And I would request you, Rutuja, take as many questions as possible. You will not get to these two gentlemen very easily every other day. So try and take the maximum benefit of them about GIFT City and whatever questions our members may have. And my best wishes to all the members who are tuning in today. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you very much, President Sir. And of course, it's always an honor to hear and listen to your words of wisdom. And truly mentioned, I think, there's an opportunity which is now at the door, which members have to look at and really have to grab the opportunity. As a facilitator, we can certainly assist me and Sanjeev with the committee directorate, whatever best we can do with the team, Monica, Jayan, the secretary, and the entire team of the directorate. We'll certainly do. And these are one of the opportunities where we listen to the experts. But thank you so much for sparing your valuable time today and sharing your experience, and would request if you could continue. But of course, as per your busy schedule, you can see whatever time you'd like to continue. And over to you, Rutuja. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sanjeev bhai.
Thank you so much, first of all, the President and Vice President, Mr. Abhayji and Sanjeevji. And great thank you to Aniket Bhai also. I think I have interacted with him past, but uh, today listening to him was really a pleasure because he kept the chartered accountant and gift city so much interconnected, which no one can think about it, that how much we can actually do for the chartered accountant as a professional, for gift city as well as globally, how much udan we can do. We can go globally, we can make that awareness globally for the gift city as well as for the chartered accountancy as CA India. And thank you so much for this opportunity of the moderation, first of all. Uh, as a member of the Chartered Accountancy, I think one of the 3, 4 matters which we can think about the gift city, because I think the awareness has to be created amongst the members, and I think a great initiative by the council members here. Because of this entire web series, I'm very sure at the end of the entire web series, the chartered accountant will be foolproof, ready to take that udan and keep the gift city and IFSC at such a level and create that awareness globally, so that opportunities which are not yet I would say opportunities which are not yet created, or opportunities which have not even thought, that process has not been even thought process carried out, that can also be done. Because I know by interacting with the IFSC regulators, how much receptive they are to the ideas, thought process. There's always an opportunity at the regulators. They are not regulators. When I personally visited the gift house 3 years back, I could see that they are actually looking at clients. They are very receptive to the thought process. What else we can do in Gift City and IFSC Center? What else we can improve to make it happen, to make that vision happen, which Honorable Prime Minister has created in 2017, when the entire Gift City and IFSC project started as a full-fledged. And with Himanshu Bhai and Abhishek, I'm sure we can have their listening, great listening. But as a moderator, I would just say a few words from the advantages of the gift city point of view. It, as a chartered accountant, we always look at what are the advantages, why we should project to the client that you come to the gift city and so many benefits you will get. I would say majorly there are 3, 4 things which have to be kept in mind. There are obviously tax incentives. There are a lot of tax incentives. There is a income tax exemptions given. There are capital gains exemptions given. There is a GST stamp duty exemptions. But the majority part is there is a lot of regulatory flexibility. There is a one-time window where you just go to the IFSC authorities and they'll make it happen. They will also give you the entire guidance of how to make the applications, how to go ahead and set up the units, how you can go ahead and pitch the clients for having the units and the companies set up in there, whether it is a fund structure, whether it is an insurance company sector, whether it is aircraft or shipping companies coming from outside of India and setting up their units in the gift city. The entire regulatory structure is such a flexible that it streamlines the entire environment. We always think that for ease of doing business, India is a little behind. The entity can be incorporated in the USA in a daytime, but it takes time in India to just incorporate an entity because of the regulatory issues. But when you go to the IFSC gift city, you will see the entirely turnaround criteria. Because you will find they are welcoming you in such a manner, they're helping you to entirely liberalize your regulatory environment. So the ease of doing business and having the simplified procedures, I would say it is the best in the IFSC gift city. As Aniket Bhai already mentioned, the infrastructure and the operational benefits which our GIFT City is giving, it's a world-class infrastructure. There's a smart city features which has been provided in the GIFT City as well. There is an operational efficiency, so the entities will benefit from the having the entire conductive environment. There is a talent pool available in Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar, which will drive the entire setup and as the entire India is a GCC hub. If the GCCs are also set up, you will have the n number of employment creation, so which will definitely boost the entire economy of India. Uh, GIFT City is also giving you access the global markets. So as you are creating and having the entity set up in the financial hub, which is now GIFT City IFSC, the global investors are coming to India, which will open a lot of gateways to at a large level for members as a chartered accountants for us, as well as for the businesses, as well as for the offshore funds which are setting up, having investments in the Indian equities, which will boost the entire economy once again. And as you are aware, there are a lot of the India is also a startup market. There are a lot of innovations happening day by day. So the tasting of the startups can be done in the IFSC, which will be driven in the fintech market. So entirely implementing that innovative financial solutions in the GIFT City IFSC is possible. And diversified structures. Okay, you can make investments in outside of India, having non-residents coming into India. They can make the investments in India. So all these opportunities will definitely boost our jobs and our businesses in India, and which ultimately, as a facilitators and at intermediaries, as a chartered accountant, it's our job to make that happen. So I would say it is our job also to make that awareness. It is also our job to create and go and travel to the world and talk about the GIFT City IFSC, to have those entities and the funds which are not even aware of India being creating such a financial hub. So that branding should happen from as a chartered accountant from our itself. So the charity comes at home. So the entire awareness should be created so that the entire vision of the IFSC GIFT City is also been met. Not taking much time, I would having the opportunity to introduce Mr. Himanshu Jain from the IFSC authorities himself. So Himanshu Jain is a qualified chartered accountant with experience and expertise in the field of finance, risk management, and regulatory governance. His professional journey encompasses the significant role in both private and public sector. He started his career in Mumbai as serving in a prominent consulting firm. But in 2017, he transitioned to the Ministry of Finance, where he worked on framing and implementation of the entire government policies in the Department of Public Enterprises and Central GST Office. In 2020, Mr. Himanshu was interested with the entire responsibility and deputed to the IFSC center as a unified financial regulator for IFSC center in India. And at IFSCA today, Mr. Himanshu is working in the Department of Development, working in the areas which are as enabling new products, policies, tax regime for the IFSC. So here in onwards, I would welcome Mr. Himanshu Jain to make his presentation, create more awareness for the IFSC GIFT City, and also guide us and give us that opportunity that where we can do our level best as a member of the chartered accountant, so that the entire vision is has been implemented and executed in its form and manner which it should be. So over to you, Himanshu sir.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
please.
Thanks for introducing. But we just want to do it differently. First, Akshat will come in and he'll present, and then I'll pitch in. So we
Sure.
can start with Akshat. So if you can introduce Akshat first, then
Yes,
start
absolutely.
the discussion.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes. So I am taking the opportunity to even introduce Mr. Akshat. Mr. Akshat Ganierwala, he joined IFSC in 2020 and he belongs to the first batch of officers who were recruited from the civil services examination process. Prior to this, he was working with the project monitoring group at Invest India, and the project monitoring group is an institution mechanism which is set up by Government of India for expedited resolution of issues and regulatory bottlenecks in the infrastructure projects with the investment upward up to 500 crores in India. Presently, he's working as a manager development at IFSCA and is looking for the entire international affairs and the registration of foreign securities in IFSC. He holds a BA LLB degree from the Symbiosis Law School, Pune. I heartily welcome Mr. Akshat Ganyarwala to present his presentation.
Thank you very much, Rutuja. And at the outset, I would like to thank all the senior leadership of ICI, especially Abhay Sanjeev ji, and obviously Aniket Talati ji for organizing this Global Udan series of webinar. I think over the past 3 years, ICI has really, collaborated very well with the IFSC authority and has contributed immensely to the growth of the entire IFSC ecosystem, including enabling and supporting us in our new initiatives, as Aniket ji just mentioned about the bookkeeping, accounting, taxation regulations. So I think the role and contribution of ICI was instrumental in bringing out those regulations, which has created remarkable opportunities for the entire CA professional community. So for this webinar series, what we thought was that it would be very beneficial because I've just been informed that more than 900 members have joined this webinar from all across the country. And often we hear that, from even a conceptual perspective, I think there is some dissonance as to, what the current status of GIFT is, what are the regulations, what are the opportunities. So the first half of the presentation, I would be talking about the current status and overall from a conceptual business regulations. I'll hand it over to my colleague Himanshu Jain. And before I begin, let me just put a caveat out there that I think I'm the only non-CA person in this webinar. So please excuse me if I don't live up to any of the expectations that any member may have.
Also, before you start, Akshayji, I would also request all the members, as we have such a huge audience today, please post your questions in the chat box, which we will take up after the presentation. As a moderator, I have also few questions for Himanshuji and Akshayji, but please post your questions in the chat box and we'll take it up at the end of the session. Thank you. Over to you, Akshayji.
Thank you. Are the slides visible?
It is visible.
Thank you. I think before we get into, what the current status of GIFT City is, I think it's very important to understand what was the intent of the government. I mean, why did essentially government set up this, global financial center within India when globally there are so many other centers? New York is a global financial center, and closer to Indian shores, you have Singapore, you have Hong Kong, you have centers like Dubai now also emerging as, prominent global financial centers. So the rationale was that, and I think this slide very well articulates as to why India needed its own financial center. So the map that you see on this slide and all the countries and the services that you see are, which primarily represents the financial services which India was availing from these global financial centers. So prior to GIFT City, if India wanted an aircraft, a commercial aircraft on lease, so those leasing transactions were being carried out of Ireland and not India. The entire reinsurance business was being, availed from UK, which is a very prominent reinsurance hub. All our funds, capital, all the capital contribution that was coming into India, whether in public markets or private markets, were being channelized to centers like Mauritius, Singapore, Hong Kong. And therefore, government decided that why India being an aspiring, superpower, why cannot it have its own financial center, and why does it need to give all these financial services related business on a platter to other countries? And with this intent and objective, the government of India set up its own global financial center, which is in the Indian nomenclature, it's referred to as an IFSC, International Financial Services Center, in 2015. Now, just a timeline and the journey in terms of journey of how the center has grown. So this center is physically located in GIFT City. GIFT City, as many of you may be aware, is India's first fully operational greenfield smart city. And the city came up, the physical infrastructure development of the city started way back in 2007. And then in 2013, the first commercial building was inaugurated. The IFSC, which sits as a concept, as a legal concept, sits in the SEZ regulations, because being the financial center, the International Financial Center has to legally sit in some legislation. So it sits under the SEZ law of the country. While in India, there are more than 300 special economic zones, but this is the multi-services SEZ in GIFT City is the only SEZ in India which has been notified as the International Financial Services Center. And this was operationalized in the year 2015 when the Honorable Chief Minister of the state, Honorable Narendra Modi ji, became the Prime Minister of the country in 2014. And then in the next budget in 2015, government in the union budget announced that our dream of having our own international financial center will now be realized. And it tasked the domestic regulators, RBI, SEBI, IRDAI, to come up with, this center-specific regulations for banking, capital markets, and insurance, which were subsequently, just after the budget, they were notified by the domestic regulators. So from 2015 till December 2019, 4.5 years, the domestic regulators were instrumental in developing and regulating this zone. But then by 2019, government studied global models of how, new age financial centers are coming, and they realized that to develop a global financial center, you require dedicated and focused regulatory intervention. And therefore, government, in a very path-breaking reform, through an enactment of the parliament, established the International Financial Services Center Authority through the IFSC Act. And what essentially this act mandated was that now India, the IFSC authority was given the powers of all 4 domestic regulators, which is RBI, SEBI, IRDA, and PFRDA, so that this zone can be regulated not by multiple regulators, but by one unified regulator. And we effectively got our statutory powers with effect from 1st October 2020. So the real traction and, the momentum that the center gained was essentially from October 2020, when our first chairperson and the regulatory powers were conferred upon the authority. So from October 2020 till March, April of 2025, these 4-5 years, IFSC has notified about 35 regulations, and these regulations are, benchmarked to international best practices and global norms and global standards. As a result of which, now I can confidently and very happily state that we have upwards of 800 entities now which are registered with the authority. Now, people often ask us that what is the objective of IFSC? Why has this been set up? So, the first objective, which I also spoke about in the first slide, was to onshore India-centric international financial services business, which has gone overseas, because previously we did not have our own, foreign currency zone in the country. So the primary mandate of GIFT IFSC is to bring back India-centric business. So it's in common parlance, we call it as onshoring the offshore. The second objective is that if India has to become a developed country by 2047, we would require enormous amount of capital in different forms and shapes. And obviously, domestic capital would not be adequate if India has to, say, become a $35 or $30 trillion economy. And therefore, how do we, channelize global capital into the countries? So IFSCA, being a, unique jurisdiction, can become a prominent gateway or a dominant gateway to channelize all this global capital from developed parts of the country into India for India's own development needs. The third objective is to develop expertise in niche businesses, financial services business, which hitherto were not being conducted out of the country. For example, aircraft leasing, ship leasing, treasury. This entire global treasury operations was, primarily being done from Hong Kong. Commodity trading, Singapore is a very big commodity trading hub. Fintech, obviously, though India has, been at the forefront of the global fintech regime, but still IFSC can become a platform for Indian fintechs to go global. So for these niche and specialized sectors, I think IFSC is uniquely positioned to provide opportunities like, the entire CA community to exhibit their talent, not just for the domestic market, but for global markets. And fourth objective is obviously to create employment for the financial services within the country, because we had previously been witnessing flight of Indian talent overseas because of the opportunities that were available to them in global financial institutions, say in New York, Singapore, Dubai. So why can't we as a country provide those opportunities to CA and other financial professionals sitting within India? Now, in terms of the city, because we often get asked some of these questions that, in terms of development of the infrastructure, what is the current status? So GIFT City, in terms of location, is strategically located between Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar. It is about 15-20 minutes from the airport, Ahmedabad airport, so very well connected. It's about 15 minutes. It would be from the upcoming high-speed railway corridor between Bombay and Ahmedabad, so which will also further enhance the connectivity between Bombay and Ahmedabad. In terms of the city infrastructure, like I mentioned, it's a greenfield smart city, which has all three components built into the structure of the city, that is commercial development, residential development, and recreational facilities. A smart city are all incorporated. The total development rights in terms of the buildings and the commercial infrastructure is upwards of now 29 million square feet. On the slide, it's mentioned 27. And about 15 million square feet of area is under development. About 22 buildings are under operation. And about 30 commercial towers and residential towers in total are under construction. Now, the city is divided into two zones. So one is being an SEZ. So there is an SEZ zone, and then there's a domestic tariff area. The city, the dimensions of the city are upwards of 800 acres, and government is further expanding it because of the huge demand that, it's receiving from the industry. Now, the special economic zone has been designated as the first international financial services center, and this is where the ambit of the IFSC, which is the regulator, is limited to. So while in India, now, to put it simply, so now there are two financial jurisdictions. One is the whole of India, which is the rupee business, where entities and individuals can do all the rupee business, and then there is a small enclave or a zone which is called the IFSC in GIFT City, which is a dollar zone or a foreign currency zone where you can do all kinds of foreign currency related transactions. This entire city and concept of GIFT City as well as IFSC has obviously been conceptualized and ideated by the Honorable Prime Minister while he was the Chief Minister of the state, and more so now that he's the Prime Minister of the country. He wants IFSC to become the nerve center of new age global financial services. He wants GIFT City to become an important gateway to connect India with global opportunities. Now, being CA professionals, I think this slide is very critical to understand from a legal perspective as to how GIFT IFSC is different from domestic India and how GIFT City is different from foreign jurisdictions. So if you see the middle column, which is highlighted in the light orange color, in terms the biggest USP or uniqueness of IFSC is that under FEMA, it is a non-resident zone. So while the whole of India, except for the IFSC, is a resident zone under FEMA, and therefore there are capital control restrictions. IFSC being non-resident zone is outside the ambit of the capital control restrictions which are imposed under the Foreign Exchange Management Act, which enables institutions and entities and individuals to bring foreign capital into IFSC, take capital out of IFSC without, procedural bottlenecks or challenges. Interestingly, it is the only currency that is not permitted here is the Indian rupees. So while you're in India, in this zone, the IFSC zone, the authority and the government have permitted institutions and entity to carry out financial transactions in 15 permissible freely convertible foreign currencies, which are predominantly all your major currencies of the globe, such as USD, yen, GBP, pound, etc. In terms of tax, what government realized that if IFSC has to be developed as a foremost new age financial center, we have to provide tax parity vis-a-vis other financial centers, so that businesses, Indian businesses that had gone overseas, are able to relocate and come back to the Indian shores. So a lot of tax exemptions have been hard-coded in the Indian Income Tax Act, and my colleague, when he talks about all the tax policies in the sections which are incorporated in the IT Act, he'll delve more into this subject. In terms of other laws, what Government of India has done is that while we continue to be governed by the other domestic laws of India, such as the Indian Companies Act, the LLP Act, a lot of carve-outs have been granted to the IFSC units under those acts. So more than 40-50 sections of the Indian Companies Act do not apply to the IFSC or apply with slight modification. So like that, several acts have been modified by special powers which have been granted under the IFSC Act, so that the IFSC can become a zone where global norms and practices can be provided to global institutions. Now, in terms of the uniqueness and distinctness of the IFSC, like I previously mentioned, there's one unified dedicated regulator. So to come into the IFSC, now you only deal with one financial regulator, whether you are a banking entity, you are an accounting entity, you are an insurance entity. All approvals and licenses, including the SEZ approval, is given by the IFSC authority. 15 convertible foreign currencies are permitted to do business. Your administrative expenses you can defray in your the Indian rupee. So this provides a very unique opportunity where your income is in foreign currency and your expenses are in the Indian rupee. There are no capital control restrictions. All our regulations are globally benchmarked. And the objective, the competitive advantage, which is highlighted in the second half of this slide, is that while other financial centers such as Singapore, Hong Kong, not Hong Kong, but at least Singapore and other smaller financial centers, they primarily do a lot of intermediation because they do not have domestic demand, because they are relatively smaller jurisdictions. But India, because it has a very large domestic appetite for foreign currency and dollar business, IFSC can become, very compelling jurisdiction to avail all kinds of these financial services business for such Indian entities. In terms of the business activities, again, I think this slide is very important for all CA professionals to understand what all financial services businesses are being conducted. While my colleague will delve into all these separately, we have separate slides for each segment and dedicated, and then he'll get into BATF opportunities as well. But from an overall perspective, whatever you see on these slides, all segments are now fully operational, and the numbers mentioned in the brackets are the actual number of entities which are licensed by us. When you think, when you look at the banks, so now we have about 29-30 banks, 4-5 foreign bank applications are already under process. There are 2 capital stock exchanges which do your dollar products. There are clearing corporations. There's an international depository here. About 80-85 brokers are here. 4 investment bankers are here because direct listing has also been permitted now, which will provide a lot of opportunities to investment banks. We have clearing members, depository participants. In terms of asset management industry, I think it has witnessed remarkable growth. Almost now 160-170 SMEs, fund management entities, have been registered. About close to 230 funds or schemes, category 1, category 2, and category 3 funds have been launched. We have portfolio managers, investment advisors in the insurance sector, and the insurance sector is also gaining traction with almost now 45 entities, including intermediaries as well as insurance and reinsurance firms, are now operational. Then we have the first bullion spot exchange. We have aircraft leasing firms, ship leasing firms, ITFS platforms. And in terms of emerging businesses, I think one unique business line that we are concentrating upon is the foreign universities. I'm very happy to share that now we have 4 foreign universities, 2 are operational and 2 will be operational by end of this year. BATF is a new opportunity that has been now enabled in the zone. Ancillary, more than 80 entities, including CA firms, consultancy firms, secretarial firms, are now operating out of GIFT. In terms of the regulatory architecture here, so from October 2020, what IFSC has endeavored is that we have moved completely away from the domestic regulatory architecture, and we have created our own regulatory ecosystem, and about 35 regulations have been notified by the authority across different domains or segments of the financial sector. We have our own banking regulations, our own capital market regulations, our own frameworks and regulations for ship leasing, aircraft leasing, our own AML CFT guidelines, insurance, about more than 10, 15 regulations have been notified by the authority. Therefore, domestic regulations of RBI, SEBI, and IRD are no longer applicable. It is the IFSC regulations which are applicable to the entities which are operating in the zone. This slide is also, I think, very important because often we get asked that, while all of that is good, that, all of these regulations have been notified, but what is the real action? How much business is actually being carried out of the zone? So I think that is answered by in this specific slide. Now we have almost more than 830 entities which are registered with the IFSC zone. And when we started, we hardly had about 120, 129 entities. Almost 700 plus entities have registered with us in the last 4.5 years. The stock exchanges are clocking almost $95 billion of monthly turnover. And this is primarily due to the SGX Nifty now transitioning to GIFT City as GIFT Nifty. The banking asset size has grown enormously. When we started, it was nearly $14 billion. It has now almost touched 80, 89, 90 billion dollars. So this is all your ECB and trade financing, which is primarily being channelized towards India. Fund management entities, like I mentioned, about 160 fund managers, your private equity, your hedge funds, your long-only funds, your venture capital funds, they're all now based out of IFSC. Debt listing is also happening at a very rapid pace now with interest rates globally easing. I think this will again gain momentum. About $65 billion of debt listing has happened on the exchanges here. Previously, all this debt listing was happening on global exchanges such as the London Stock Exchange or the Singapore Stock Exchange. So all your PSUs and Indian corporates are now listing their bonds on the IFSC exchanges, which is your NSE, IX, and India INX. Banking transactions have crossed $120 billion. In the aviation sector, again, we have witnessed very robust growth. About 240 plus assets have been leased out of the zone, including 90 aircrafts and helicopters, which includes aircrafts of Air India and Indigo as well. The funds, which I mentioned previously, have a total targeted corpus of more than $50 billion. So I think the funds ecosystem is rapidly evolving in the zone. And about 27-30 billion dollars of derivative transactions are being carried out on monthly basis by the banking units in IFSC, which include your USD INR non-deliverable forwards, which is a very popular product, which was previously being carried out only overseas, is also now slowly gravitating towards GIFT. This slide is again a snapshot of all the prominent global and domestic institutions which are now operating from the GIFT City and the IFSC. So a lot of foreign banks are here: Standard Chartered, HSBC, JP Morgan, ANZ from Australia and New Zealand has recently been become operational. Qatar National Bank has also recently been approved. Three Japanese banks, MUFG, SMBC, and the likes are also now operating from the zone. In terms of fund management entities, we have Morgan Stanley, LGT, Boring, Lighthouse, RDR, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, has set up their own dedicated FME entity to make investments into India. From the CA community, I think a lot of professional service providers have also set up base. You have your PwCs, your law firms such as Cyril Amarchand, Apex, Vistra, your other consulting firms have set up base. Aniket ji and other guests were also mentioning about the GCC opportunity. So Bank of America has set up a very large 2,000 plus seater GCC in GIFT City. And many more TechFin firms such as Wipro, Infosys have also been approved under the TechFin category, and they're creating enormous large number of job opportunities. Cognizant has also been approved. In the domestic side of GIFT City, we have entities such as IBM, Google, Capgemini, which are providing technology services to their global arm. Now, with this, I hand it over to Himanshu ji, and he will take you through all the tax and other specific business slides for each of the segments that we just discussed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Akshat, and I thank ICAI for organizing this Global UDAN webinar series. And in its third session, today we are discussing about the GIFT City and how the IFSC is becoming an enabler for the businesses, especially in the financial services, and what other important areas that we are already, working at in IFSC. And So I thank ICAI for being, a very good supporter to us. And we have been collaborating with ICAI for last 3-4 years during our domestic and international reach out programs and the learning programs. So before I take it forward from here, I just want to go back a few slides back, and so that I can, again give a context, and then we can take it forward. Just a minute. What's this? I don't know if it's visible, but it's okay. So yeah, I just go a few slides back and come back to the slide again where Akshat stopped. So before we go ahead, so the whole concept of IFSC, and as Akshat discussed about it, and Chitalati also mentioned about it. So how is it different from India or the rest of the world is very important, before we go ahead. So I'll just restate the things which Akshat has stated earlier. So for a business, you are in various territories. So either a business is in domestic India or from India perspective, it is outside India from Indian lens. But why did we came up with this is something which Akshat had discussed, but I'll just again discuss what are the important characteristics of being in SEZ and IFSC and being regulated by IFSCA. So on the FEMA side, the entities in IFSC are again a person resident outside India like any other foreign institution. And on the currency side, only currency which is permitted is international foreign currencies, which are 15 notified currencies, including the important ones like USD, Australian dollar, Singapore dollar, euro, pound, and all the major currencies which constitute more than 98% of the global trade and capital flows. On the tax side, so for a business, what is important is that you have to have that leverage or that advantage of being able to operate like any other global or foreign entity to operate when we discuss any entity to be working in IFSC. So what is also important is that on the tax side, you have to have the tax competitiveness, because business have to choose between various jurisdiction, the jurisdiction that they may want to operate from. So on the tax side, although we as an entity in IFSC, all the IFSC entities are resident in India from tax perspective, but there are special carve-outs for IFSC entities in when they operate from IFSC and get the license from IFSC, the regulator. And on the legal side, although IFSC is part of the Indian legal system and all the Indian laws are applicable, including companies law, LLP law, chartered accountants law, or any other law which is applicable, except there are a few specific acts for which IFSC has been given as the power of the administrator for those acts. So, but still within multiple laws in India, there are specific carve-outs which have been provided for entities in IFSC, like Companies Act have more than 50 provisions which are applied in modified form, or there are complete exemptions in those 50 provisions of the company's law. So with this background, I'll just move ahead and discuss about various businesses that we have in IFSC. So so before moving into that, I'll just give you a basic, I'll just discuss here a basic tax policy that is applicable for the IFSC as a zone. So for businesses which are regulated and licensed by the IFSCA, there is a 10 years of tax holiday, 10 consecutive years of out of the first 15 years of registration with the regulator that can be opted for tax holiday. And that is under Section 80 LA. On the MAT, although MAT is not applicable for companies setting up in the new companies tax regime, But if there are companies in the old tax regime, the MAT has been reduced for IFSC based entities to 9% vis-a-vis what is applicable in India in general. And on the STT, CTT, and stamp duties, so the entities in IFSC or the products that are listed on IFSC exchanges, there is no CTT or STT is applicable for the investors. And on the stamp duty, the government of Gujarat and the SEZ provisions provide for exemption from stamp duty applicability. On the GST side, I don't need to discuss much because SEZ provisions must be already clear with the members of the Chartered Accountants community. And likewise for the customs and the GST, all the SEZ related provisions are applicable, thereby the area being considered as a more of a export area or outside India from the GST and customs perspective. So any consumption of service or goods by the entities in IFSC is not subjected to GST and customs, and any supply into India is obviously subjected to the provisions of the customs and GST as otherwise applicable for all the other SEZs. On the ITS policy, so this is a state policy which is applicable for larger employment generating entities like TechFins, GCC, bookkeeping, accounting, and taxation services providers in IFSC. So these are general policies or the tax provisions which are applicable for the businesses in IFSC. As Akshat already discussed, the kind of spectrum that we have in IFSC, the kind of entities that we have in IFSC, but I've chosen a few specific important ones to be discussed today for the members of the CA community. And let me tell you one thing, it's really difficult to be here and, speaking from one side without getting a feed from the visual feeds from the members, but that's how we are set up today. So I'm just only, from the one side, speaking. But yeah, there is I think a chat box which has been arranged. You can post your queries over there. So I'll just take it forward from here. So on the banking side, Akshat had covered, the kind of banking volume that we have, more than $1,200 billion of trade that has, or the transaction that has happened from IFSC. So on the banking side, we have all the major Indian banks and all major continents, banks from all the major continents available here, except I think South America. We have banks from starting from Japan, banks from Australia, Middle East, banks from Europe, UK, America. So banks from all the major globally systematically important banks, major of them are present in IFSC, and all the Indian banks are present in IFSC. So why these banks are present here, I'll just take 2 minutes here. Because as a financial services center, what we are really wanting to do is, to onshore the activities which were otherwise done offshore. So a lot of Indian corporates or Indian clients or borrowers or lenders, they are going out from India to get the ECBs or trade finance or investments, or finance for any other activities. So the whole purpose was to, how to, why should we export our financial services, international financial services? Why can we not have our own offshore center and, get those services available from IFSC? So Indian, including Indian banks which are present in overseas, like, SBI may be present in, all the major countries, or maybe HDFC or ICICI being present in other countries. So what they primarily do is, amongst others, that they would be lending to Indian clients, or they may be managing in portfolios for their Indian clients from overseas for their, foreign currency investments or borrowings. So that's what has been enabled in IFSC, that, banks can set up in IFSC and work as if they were, present in any other foreign jurisdiction. So from the bank's perspective, banks can give ECB loans into India from IFSC instead of Indian borrowers going to Europe or Middle East or Singapore, they can now come to IFSC and take those ECBs or trade finance. And being a offshore center, so banks do many other activities, as a arranger or a corporate agent, or as an investment or merchant banker. So anything which is permitted for a bank in home regulator by the home regulator is also permitted to be undertaken from IFSC. So that's the basic about banking, and there's a broad activities which are permitted and mentioned on the slide. I don't want to repeat them, but from a banking perspective, as a member or as a consultant, when you look, how IFSC is relevant, is that when you as a Indian borrower raise monies from overseas under the ECB route, so the tax rate or the withholding tax rate applicable under the income tax law or the treaty would be ranging from say 10 to 20%. But if the same lending is arranged, or the same funds are arranged, or the loan is arranged from the IFSC based bank, then the withholding tax is not applicable, because the bank is a resident entity for income tax purposes. And that's where the delta between any other foreign center vis-a-vis IFSC, when you see from a banking services perspective. And that's where you can see, for your clients, whenever you are looking for trade finance or ECB, you can travel down to IFSC and get in touch with the banks in IFSC and see for yourself, if you're getting better competitive rates from bank, or a better competitive arrangement from the banks in IFSC. So that's about banking sector. And on the capital market side, we have both major exchanges in India set up their subsidiaries in IFSC. Both NSE and BSE have their exchanges in IFSC. We have a depository, clearing corporations, and all the required infrastructure, institutions, and brokers present in IFSC. More than 80 brokers are present right now. And this number is a bit dated. More than 60,000 demat accounts are already opened with the IFSC-based brokers. And what we have seen on the exchange side is that a lot of liquidity has transferred from SGX to SGX, which was providing a foreign denominated Nifty derivative product. Now that has moved to IFSC in September 2024. And so that's one important activity which is being done in IFSC. And then there are a lot of other derivative instruments which are currently available on the IFSC exchange. And also what is interesting about IFSC exchange is that even the remote trading option is available. So a broker or a prop trader in any foreign country can take a direct license from the exchange instead of broker, and can directly trade on the exchange in IFSC. So that's very unique, and that is really generating a lot of interest from foreign traders perspective. And on the exchange side, I think Akshat mentioned earlier that we have a lot of bonds that are listed on IFSC exchange. And what I have seen is that more than 90% of the bonds which are listed by Indian corporates in last 5-6 years have been listed on or raised through IFSC based exchanges. And the value would be around $60 billion of those bonds listed on the IFSC exchange. So coming on to the tax perspective for these products on IFSC, derivative trade by the non-residents on IFSC exchanges is not subject to income tax, or not considered as transfer under the capital gains. And for bonds that are listed on IFSC exchanges, the interest rate which is applicable is 9%, vis-a-vis would have been applicable at say 10 to 20% for any other listing of bond in any other countries. So how the bond and the trading on the IFSC exchange is taxable in the IFSC. And a second important piece which the government is announced very recently, even the finance minister announced when she was in Mumbai some time back. So what is being expected is that direct listing of Indian stocks would happen in IFSC, and the regulatory provisions are in place, and there's a lot of interest for Indian companies to raise their foreign capital by listing onto the IFSC exchanges. So this broadly covers the capital market segment. On the investment side, we'll cover it separately in the funds slide. So on the fund side, this has been one of the very important area to have picked up from the IFSC. We have more than by now 30 funds that are registered with IFSCA. And what has been enabled or is different in IFSC vis-a-vis when we see India is that in India, generally this funds are being regulated by the SEBI. That is a category 1, 2, 3, or a mutual fund per se is regulated by the SEBI in India. But in IFSC, it is quite different. Looking at the foreign or the international way of doing or regulating this business, IFSC regulates the FMEs, and that is fund management entity, or we can call fund managers. And then a fund manager can set up the schemes. And broadly, we look at the fund manager instead of the funds per se. So the categories of fund is like the complete spectrum of funds have been permitted in IFSC. The fund can be category 1 fund, 2 fund, or 3 fund, or a retail fund which can be launched from IFSC. And we have seen venture capital funds, private equity funds, specific debt funds, specific funds which are looking into specific ESG specific mandate. Funds which are looking into specific sports mandate are also launched from IFSC. And first time, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority has moved out of Abu Dhabi and set up their sovereign fund in IFSC. And large investors like, GIC, Temasek, or, OTPP are investing through funds which are based or set up in the IFSC. So on the fund side, we have seen a lot of entities which are relevant for the ecosystem being present in good numbers. So the complete ecosystem of the fund management related service providers is present, starting from the trusteeship, up to the fund administrators or the law firms, consulting firms are present in IFSC. So on the screen, you can see the numbers. The targeted corpus, which the funds have currently committed, is like 50 billion for investment into India and also overseas, and they've already invested more than I think this number is a bit old, but I can say 5 billion. So so that's the kind of in the last just 3 years. This is what we've seen in last 3 years. These numbers what we are seeing today. So on the tax side, it's very interesting that what tax government of India has provided is initially government of India has provided a tax regime for category 1 and 2, which provides a pass-through status for the basically for PVC and such category of fund which do more of FDI kind of investments. So there the fund investors of the fund get a look through or pass-through status. And for a Cat 3 fund, which is more of a public fund which invests into public market predominantly, there the tax regime is comparable or sometimes better than what is available for the FPIs or the category 3 funds which are set up in offshore jurisdictions. So if we take an example, like many of these funds are FPIs investing into India. So we have onshored those FPIs which were otherwise could have set up in say London or maybe Mauritius, as maybe New York. So that's what we have tried to, as an IFSCA and as a zone, try to onboard such kind of activities and such kind of entities into the IFSC, because FPIs cannot be set up in IFSC, right? Sorry, into the DTA. So that's the best option available for them to be closer to India and still operate like being a foreign entity. So the FPIs get a tax treatment which is under the law. So there is a tax regime which is provided under Section 10(4)(d), which exempts certain incomes of the Category 3 funds, and certain incomes are subject to tax under Section 115(a)(d), akin to like any other FPI. So yeah, you cannot compare with each and every FPI because it's set up in separate jurisdiction. But what is interesting and why we have seen a traction into the funds segment per se is that because the funds regime in IFSC is under the law of the land, that is income tax law, and the funds regime which any other investor or the fund or the FPI would get or the FDI would get would be under the treaty which would be between the two countries where the fund would be set up. So then there is a lot of compliances or a lot of questions which may be questioned by the authorities in India. But when you come through the IFSC zone, you have a clear visibility on your tax treatment, but not. But then it comes with its own comfort that Government of India drives due to presence of a regulator which is set up by the Government of India itself, that's IFSCA. So that's where our fund regime is, and so more than 160 fund managers are registered, and more than 230 funds are currently investing into and outside India from IFSC. I keep myself brief because there are a lot of things to speak about each of these segments, but given the time constraint and the kind of we can have a Q&A session, so I'm putting myself controlling myself to limit myself to speak into getting into a lot of depth. And we can always connect post this call also through our email IDs and through ICI also. So these are the category of funds or the big names or the important names which you may be aware of. These are the names which are already present in IFSC. I'll just skip this slide now. And on the insurance and reinsurance side, so on the insurance side, entities in insurance businesses can do direct life insurance, direct non-life insurance, health insurance, and the reinsurance business from IFSC. So currently we have good Indian firms and also global firms which are present with us. More than 30 firms in both insurance and insurance intermediary space are registered with us. And a complete ecosystem of the brokers and the insurance companies and other relevant professionals is available in IFSC. I'll not want to get into more about insurance, but something which is important as a and the recent one is that in the last Union Budget, in the Finance Act 2025, government has modified the implications of 10(10)(d) provisions, which is the monies which are received by the policy holders or their family members at the time of maturity or at the time of death. So those provisions have been relaxed, and now the policy redemption or the termination benefits which the policyholder gets from IFSC based insurance offices are not subject to tax in India. So that's an update for the chartered accountants members here. Otherwise, all these policy financial instruments or the insurance instruments are available from IFSC. On to the next segment. This is a very interesting and very important area for the zone. And so I'll take these two together, the ship leasing and aircraft leasing. So what we have seen, before me joining IFSCA, what we have seen that the Ministry of Civil Aviation did some report, and they did some surveys, and they what we understood that more than 90% of the aircrafts that we use in India and globally, more than 70% of those aircrafts are all leased into by the aircraft carriers. So these are not owned by the aircraft carriers. These are basically financial arrangements or rented or the leased aircrafts which are being used by the aircraft carriers, because the aircraft requires huge capital to be invested, and then there may not be a lot of capital pool which may be available for aircraft carriers to bring for the ever expanding their fleet size. So so a global model is that the aircrafts are generally leased by on an operating lease model by the aircraft carriers, and these are all leased majorly from centers like Dublin, that is Ireland, or Singapore, or America, USA. So so India being one of the largest consumer of these aircrafts, and so we have been a largest consumer also, one of the largest consumer also of these leasing services into India. So the whole perspective, or the whole purpose of the IFSC was to onboard or onshore the foreign international financial services, so that is where we worked upon, and the IFSC came out with a regulation for an activity which is otherwise unregulated globally, and provided a very simplified and very light touch regulatory framework for aircraft leasing and ship leasing from IFSC. And today we see more than 30 lessors and around 250 assets in this category of aircraft are leased from IFSC, likes of Indigo, Air India, global players like Willis Lease, Rolls-Royce. They are present today in IFSC and leasing into India, and also a few players are leasing from IFSC to other foreign jurisdictions. So on the tax side, it's it's because chartered accountants can understand, it's very transactional also, and sometimes also on the business side. So on the business side, it's obviously ATLA is available, but on the transactional side, whatever lease in is done by IFSC entities, say from say from US or from Europe, or from anywhere. So whatever the lease rentals are paid by the IFSC unit to their offshore lessors, so those are not subject to tax in India, and is not subjected to withholding or TDS provisions in India. And on the interest payments made by IFSC entities in general are not subject to tax when this interest payments are made to non-residents by the IFSC entity. So these are two important provisions with leasing and ship leasing. So on the fintech side, I think it was discussed in the initial discussion, but I'll just touch upon what is the regulatory framework and what all this we have around the fintech and tech fin institutions. So IFSC provides both categories of licenses. One is the direct authorization. So if there is a fintech which has a developed product and wants to get a full license, so that is an option. And then in case a fintech entity is still developing and want to come under a sandbox model, so then we can give without office a limited use authorization. And on the cooperation side, which is very important for any fintech, so IFSCA has a interoperable regulatory sandbox with the domestic regulator. So if you come and set up with IFSCA, you get a bridge with the Indian regulators, and data can be shared between Indian regulators through IFSCA, and so the larger data is available for fintechs to work on. And likewise, we also have an international bridge with Singapore. So entities in IFSC have a bridge to connect with Singapore-based entities. So yeah, so I'll just cover it very limitedly and move on to the next section, because we have very limited time then left for the Q&A session. On the sustainable finance, in all our major segments, so we have enabled sustainable finance related products. So we allow sustainable lending by the banks, and we have already mandated banks to perform 5% of their lending to be sustainable lending. And there is already a platform which allows issuance of sustainable bonds or ESG labeled bonds or the green bonds. On the fund side also, we have permitted launch of or setting up of funds which are ESG labeled or green labeled, and then there are specific dispensation for such businesses, like like we don't as a regulator charge any fees for such labeled funds in IFSC. And we're also working on climate finance and other things. So we have set up committees on these newer areas. And on the international bullion exchange, I'll briefly touch upon this. So there's other than two exchanges of BSE and NSE in IFSC, we have a separate dedicated bullion exchange, India International Bullion Exchange in IFSC, which is promoted by major market infrastructure institutions in India. Currently, it's in spot exchange. Gold and silver can be bought from or imported through IFSC. And we have vaulting capacity within IFSC and also delivery centers outside of the IFSC. So the bullion can be traded on the IFSC exchange and then can be delivered through a vaulting agency which is outside IFSC as well. So currently more than 100 tons of gold has been traded. More than 1100 tons of silver has been traded, and these are supplied by 33 qualified suppliers, and we have demanding qualified jewelers, which are more than around 167 right now. So we are also developing a few more products around the precious metals, which will be coming up in some time, like derivatives and some loan or using the BDRs that are on the IFSC exchanges. So on the foreign university side, yeah, so this is very unique, and it was earlier discussed also when Sanjeev ji and Aniket ji were discussing. So it's very unique, like as a financial center. We have also foreign universities. So when we started as a financial center, we always, got a question that, it's very difficult. It's becoming difficult to get talent, and, talent and the business has to go together, and the relevant talent has to be, developed, within the IFSC itself. So the government of India, while Honorable Finance Minister made an announcement in the Union Budget, she mentioned that we will allow foreign universities to be set up in IFSC to undertake specific programs like STEM, financial management, fintech, and such category of programs from IFSC itself. So the foreign universities or the universities can set up their offshore education center or international branch campus in IFSC itself. Currently, we have two setups already up and running from Australia, and I think two applications. One of the application has been already granted, approval has been granted to Queen's University Belfast from UK, and Coventry is also expected to start soon. And one of the other UK university has mentioned in the newspaper that they are applying to IFSC very soon. So in next 6 months or so, we have three UK universities and 2 Australian universities up and running from IFSC. And so it's very unique in a sense that these universities will give the degree and will give the same course which is available in their home centers. We have not permitted any other course which is not permitted as of now in their home center, and the pedagogy has to be similar. And so tuition fees for the universities, what we have seen is more than less than 50% or around 50% what would have been in their home jurisdiction when they are operating out of IFSC. And also the students will save on the travel and the accommodation charges that they would have to pay in foreign land. So the important part, I think, for the community, professional community, is that we have specific dedicated regulation for GIC's global in-house centers in IFSC, and this regulation allows any foreign or global financial institution to set up their GIC in IFSC for serving its group entities in from IFSC. So Bank of America houses around 2,500 capacity GCC from IFSC, and we have other few GCCs which are currently present in IFSC. On the professional service providers, we have a dedicated professional services framework wherein auditing, accounting firms, and legal firms, consulting firms, asset managers can come in and establish their presence in IFSC. So around 90 firms are currently registered with us to undertake these activities from IFSC. So you can see the names, and we have limited space, so these are the only names, but around 90 firms are registered to undertake basically the law practice, the chartered accountancy practice, accounting, bookkeeping, taxation, financial crime compliance services, fund administration, professional and management consultancy. So I think this is the area where which will maybe direct of direct relevance to chartered accountants who are practicing. And on the BATF side, so it was initially discussed that we have a dedicated regulation and on the BATF services that so for coming into BATF services, you need not be a chartered accountant firm. Any individual or any company can set up their BATF practice in IFSC. It need not be a chartered accountant firm. Even a chartered accountant firm can come, or a CPA firm can come and set up their BATF practice. But the only requirement is that you have to serve your global clients. You cannot serve Indian clients. And so we have specifically defined what is accounting services, what is bookkeeping services, taxation services, and financial crime compliance services. So these are the activities which can be done from IFSC zone by the firms registered under the BATF regulations. So these are the regulatory requirements or regulatory conditions which are provided in the regulation in a very brief, that you can come in as a company or an LLP setup. You need to appoint at least 2 officers which have the relevant qualifications to be present. That is a principal officer and compliance officer who will be directly engaging with the regulator for any interaction with the regulator. And since we don't want or as the government doesn't want shift Indian businesses or Indian practices of undertaking these businesses into IFSC as it is. So and it can be really difficult also sometimes to set up a presence without taking the existing resources into the new venture. So there is a cap that 20% of your workforce can come from your group entities, not beyond 20% can come from your group entities. As already mentioned, you can only undertake business in the specified foreign currencies. And yeah, for payments to the employees, for payments to your service providers locally, and all the local expenses can be met through INR. So there is a special account which is created for all those purposes. And but all your basic business has to be invoicing, and all your basic business and the balance sheet has to be in a foreign currency. Though you can maintain in any foreign currency, but your reporting has to be in USD with the regulator. And so I think that is it from my side. I already mentioned about service recipient has to be non-resident. And then there are certain requirements about having specific office space within the IFSC to undertake these services. So I think I'll just close here, and we can take any questions that members may have for us. Rutuja?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much, Akshat ji and Himanshu ji, for such a wonderful session. It was very helpful to understand so many avenues are available in the GIFT City for setting up the businesses. There are certain questions we have. Meanwhile, I would request members also to post certain questions in the chat box. I have certain questions which we can definitely take up. The first one is if you can share some thoughts for the opportunities of a private equity sector to set up in the IFSC GIFT City. And if the private equity gets set up, what are the activities which they can do? Sorry, Himanshu, you're on mute.
Okay.
No
So
problem.
private equity firms that are set up in IFSC. So private equity firm, what we have generally seen are set up as a fund in IFSC, and as a fund management entity, you can take a non-retail license and set up a private equity fund and invest into India and also abroad. So so those are the basic activities which can be done. And then always, once you set up that private equity firm or private equity fund, the fund management entity is a non-retail entity. And then, but then you can always expand your activities if you want to, expand into other activities, like retail also, mutual fund has been permitted in IFSC. So those can be done, but on the tax side, so all your investments into India will be considered as a look-through, pass-through status, and your investors would be directly subject to taxation in India, and all your foreign investments as a private equity firm fund would be not subject to Indian taxes. There's a specific exemption which has been provided for the category 1 and 2 funds in IFSC. So those funds or the investors are not subject to tax in India on foreign investments. Yeah.
And just an add-on question to this, if any AIF is being set up in the GIFT City, and if such AIF makes any investment in the private equity sector in India, will that be, there will be a separate SEBI approval required as it is required today, if any AIF is set up in the mainland India?
So, yeah, so see, on the private equity side, what happens is, when you set up a private equity fund in India, because it's a fund registered with the SEBI in India in the DTA, so that is regulated by SEBI as a fund, not as an investment, right? Because you're set up as a fund in India and then you are making investments, SEBI regulates it. But when you come to IFSC, as we discussed earlier, me and Akshat both covered this, that it's a territory outside India from FEMA perspective. So it's like an FDI or FVCI, which is made into India. So when an FDI or FVCI is made into India, SEBI generally doesn't come into the play because SEBI is not regulating the fund and SEBI is not regulating the investment. But yes, RBI will come into the picture, or the Government of India Ministry of Finance, or Commerce Ministry may come into the picture for your investment into India under the FVCI or FDI route, and that is how you'll have to be complying with those provisions, like you're investing from any other foreign land into India. But yeah, SEBI will not be coming into the picture for this kind of funds in IFSC.
Correct. Okay, great. Another question is, as you are aware, the family offices can shift much more than the LRS limit of $250,000 per year out of the country if they invest in the fund in the GIFT City. Because any fund which is set up in the GIFT City, up to 50% of the net worth, they can invest in such fund. So if the investments are routed through such funds, through the GIFT City, and I'm sure the investments will be tripled in coming years through the news channels and the newspapers which we are reading. So if you can just throw certain lights, what are the recent trends you have seen in terms of the settling the funds by the family offices?
So on the investments by family offices, if I say, the Government of India has issued its overseas investment rules, and in some schedules it says that 50% of the net worth can be, it's a fact, can be invested overseas. So yeah, that is permitted by the rules of the government, and that is how it stands. But yeah, under the LRS, obviously there's a limit of 250,000, and that's there for the individuals. But that is how the limit is. I don't really have those numbers, what are the investments that are currently made right away with me, and I don't know what can be the opportunity. I think it's better, it's best, the people like you who can tell us, what is the kind of numbers, which can, be invested, or, can look for the opportunities globally. But I'm sure, the kind of opportunity India provides, India is a really good option, to be invested in, and for any, further investments also. I'm not sure on, what can be the numbers and what are the numbers right now, because that is something, I think it comes under OPI rules or under the overseas investment rules. I think RBI may be, issuing such numbers, what are those numbers? I don't have it handy with me.
Correct. Great. So as an investor, as an individual investor, the way we, invest in the SIPs or mutual funds in India, through certain broker apps like Grow or Zerodha or ET or maybe Coin apps and all other multiple apps which are applicable. Can we also make investment in the mutual funds in the GIFT City in the same manner as an individual resident in India?
So, as I discussed earlier, so under the LRS route, whatever is permitted for a normal Indian resident investor as an individual up to 250,000, those can be invested, into London or maybe, New York or Singapore. Likewise, same can be invested through IFSC. And there are certain funds, which are pooling funds from Indian citizens also and Indian residents also. So likewise, those options are available. Yeah, but the question is, I think, more about digital mechanism of doing the same thing, right? So yeah, so on that aspect, if you had asked me this question 6 months back, I would have said, I don't know if there is any digital app which is coming up. But yeah, now as we see, a lot of registrations are being sought for setting up digital platforms. And I already mentioned, 60,000, because the number was dated. It was 10,000 in my presentation, but currently we have 60,000 DMAT accounts. So it cannot be, through physical process of onboarding. So it is more of digital onboardings which are done. And there are applications, and there are a number of applications which are coming up for investments overseas. From IFSC, there are payment services provider which are coming up, like, Paytm's, I'm just giving an example of Paytm. I don't know if Paytm is here, but there are payment services platforms which are setting up in IFSC, which will provide a wallet facility and allow you to invest globally, including products which are in IFSC, including FDs which are available, or certificate of deposit which are available in the IFSC. So yeah, so that kind of platforms are coming up now, and we are seeing higher retail non-resident participation also onto those platforms, and in general, even on the physical setup, we are seeing a lot of non-resident individual participation also in this digital platform. Yeah.
Glad to know that. The issues with respect to, like MCA, where the registration, we have to take it on the MCA portal by filing the incorporation documents for company setup. Is that also been taken care at the IFSC window, or it has to route through the MCA itself?
No, the application has to be made on the MCA website, which is 5+, the latest version. But government, in order to enhance ease of doing business and to expedite the entire process of onboarding of LLPs or companies, has provided us with senior dedicated officials from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs that now are part of the IFSC relay. And we have very recently come out with a public notice where we have mentioned that if any person has any issues with regard to setting up a company, we have provided the email IDs of the officers concerned, and they can raise it to them, and then it will be their responsibility to facilitate whatever issues that entities are facing with respect to incorporating entities or whether name reservation and so on.
Yeah, so I was just to add to what Akshat said, I was in a meeting sometime back with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and what we have been, we have learned is that so they are processing these applications, under the companies law, for formation of companies, within 24 hours. There, officially it may be higher, but they're processing within 24 hours, and what we have experienced also, foreign entities, the ones who are required to get the document apostilled, and have foreign directors or the shareholders, so if you have the proper documentation and things in place, a foreign entity also could get within 24 hours. That's what our experience has been, a very recent experience in last 1 month. Even a French based foreign company was onboarded or registered by the MCA within 24 months. So generally
24 hours.
Sorry, sorry, 24 hours, sorry. Generally what we have come across is, sometimes, because there's a lot of long list of documents which has to be provided. But yeah, if your team or your consultant, submits the right documents, I think it can be done, within 24 hours. But for IFSC, because we are, looking to, provide that experience, which is much easier. So we also have a dedicated senior officials, who are looking into these matters wherever, entities are stuck. But generally we have seen it's not the MCA, but it's more of, documents, which are missing, and that's leading to some delays. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Even I have the same experience in the last week itself, where within 2 working days, the entity was set up and it was a foreign company, directors and shareholders. So absolutely, MCA is working very fast and processing the applications very fast. Documentation is the key, as you rightly mentioned. Another question is, as lately in the finance, the budget 2025 also was quite promoting to the MSME units overall. What is your take on whether the IFSC GIFT City is helpful for MSME units to set up, which may cater, some fintech sector part, and though they are also will be getting the same kind of benefits, obviously, which other companies are getting. So how for them it is different than the other parties, like the other companies which are not MSME units?
Oh, so you specifically, mentioned fintech. So in that context, I would like to highlight that our endeavor as a regulatory authority and the vision of the government is that GIFT City and IFSC should become a global fintech hub. Now, to become that, we need to nurture and promote new age innovations in the fintech, finance, and technology domain. So we've come out with a very innovative framework, which is referred to as fintech entity framework, under which we onboard, young startups under the sandbox regime or ecosystem, where there are different types of sandbox arrangements available to them, such as regulatory sandbox, innovation sandbox, then interoperable regulatory sandbox, where an entity which is applying even to RBI, and if it's an overseas entity, it can apply to us, and through us, multiple regulators can remain in touch so that they have greater market access. So for startups which are covered within the overall ambit of MSME, they can test their innovative products with, live data or live market data or other information, which is very critical for, developing new products and services in the financial fintech domain. More than about 40 such fintechs have been part of our regulatory sandbox in areas such as cross-border payments, blockchain technology, so on and so forth. And these are all, young and budding entrepreneurs and startup innovators.
Okay, great.
Also,
yes,
on the MSME side, so what we discussed, the MSME, needs a competitive funding, basically, for the exporters in the MSME side, the importers on the MSME side, so they can get those, factoring done, or the LCs open through IFSC based financial institution, because currently it's really difficult for a MSME to go out and get those kind of quotes from London or New York or Dubai or Singapore. But IFSC being so close, and your own bankers, maybe ICICI or SBI or SDFC or your Canara Bank, whom you are trading or dealing with in India, are already present here. So through your own relationship manager, you can land in the IFSC and get the products on the trade finance, and if you even need ECBs. I already mentioned the banking slide that the benefits that are available for MSME while taking borrowings or factoring or of your receivables from IFSC. Yeah, so that's an important piece for MSME right now, that you can get your bills discounted from IFSC, you can get your trade financing done from IFSC, you can get your ECBs from IFSC. So yeah, these are the areas for MSME, I think, which can be really relevant. And also, if an MSME is looking for foreign investors, then there are a lot of FMEs which are set up in IFSC, which really invests big money into India. So yeah, so that is a connection which can be established, and those investment opportunities for funds and for the seekers of capital in India can be matched at IFSC.
Okay, great. So now in terms of borrowings and lendings, when we take a comparison of Indian banks giving the lending or funding to the Indian companies versus the foreign banks, there is always, we have seen the differences. How it is different for the foreign bank, which is set up their unit in the GIFT City, and then they are lending it to the Indian companies. Have you come across any such situation that there are some additional benefits which will be available to the Indian entities who are getting the lending from the foreign banks situated in GIFT City?
So generally what we have seen is, because it's more of a commercial decision between the banks and the client of bank or the customer of bank, I would not have a direct understanding of that, differences between, being an Indian bank or a foreign bank. But yeah, but what we've seen, Indian public banks, Indian private banks, and foreign banks, these are the three categories, we generally understand banks, So all the three banks are growing and growing at a very good momentum, right? So everybody's building their books, everybody's raising, capital or lending in money and creating assets into India. So I think it's between the bank and the client. It's basically customer, or credit due diligence, which impact decision. And it may be different, or it has multiple variables when you talk about various banks, and the way of doing those businesses. It's a very operational. I cannot talk about much, but yeah, I can say all the foreign banks, Indian banks, be private or public, everybody's building their books. So yeah, all the categories of customer, MSME, large ones, everybody is dealing with every category of bank in IFSC. I don't have any specific distinction between two or three categories of banks that we are having, we are dealing with in general.
Understood. And because we have the members of Chartered Accountants today on the call, few questions from the Chartered Accountants point of view I would like to ask. One of the cases where a CA firm, which is set up in the IFSC GIFT City, what are the services they can provide by sitting in the GIFT City? We have seen that the big four firms like PwC, EY has already set up their the units or the branches in the GIFT City. So what all kind of services they can provide?
Especially for the chartered accountant firms and professionals, whether it's from ICSI or the ICWA, we have enabled, because the financial industry thrives on the support that is provided by these professionals. And we've come out with a framework called Ancillary Services Framework, which was also mentioned previously in the slide that Himanshuji was talking about, that more than 80 or 90 firms are here. Under the Ancillary Services Framework, chartered accountant firms can set up in IFSC as a branch or as a separate LLP or as a company, and provide services such as consultancy services, tax advisory, and they can primarily target three kinds of clients. One is those entities which are desirous of setting up an entity in IFSC. So any bank or any SME fund manager or insurance company from India, if it wants to set up its overseas presence in IFSC. The second target group of clients is all entities within the IFSC zone, even including their audit function. And third set of clients are all overseas BFSI clients. So consulting, accounting related services. That is one aspect of under ancillary, and the other very compelling opportunity that we are providing to CA firms is, as Aniket Talati also mentioned in his introductory remarks, is the bookkeeping, accounting, taxation framework or the regulation that was notified last year. The larger objective is that India has such a robust talent of chartered accountant professionals, almost 4 lakh professionals now with registered in the institute. And therefore, the vision is, why can't IFSC become the global accounting hub? Because the cost advantage and the talent advantage that we have virtually, it's not present anywhere else across the globe. So CA firms should actually explore this BATF opportunity, which is actually very compelling. Under this BATF regulations, they will be able to serve all non-resident entities and clients, whether in the BFSI sector or non-BFSI sector.
Understood. Just an add-on question to this, as a CA firm, obviously, because in the IFSC to set up, they will require an office space and they will require an office. The majority part is their assets, which are also employees. Now, you may not have entire talent pool available or all the chartered accountants available in the Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar. So are there any possibility that there may be certain employees who are working from the GIFT City IFSC and other employees are working for the same firm from outside of Gandhinagar and Ahmedabad, say Delhi or Mumbai or any other location, where the talent pool is also available and the right set of delivery can happen. So how that works? Will that also work? That is also a question.
So I think I'll go back to what we discussed earlier, Aniket ji mentioned, we have the largest pool of accountants, not just chartered accountants, even the accountants pool that we have, especially in the financial services, otherwise the pool of talent that we have in India. And, being in Gujarat for, since 2017, last 7-8 years, I see, number of chartered accountants and otherwise accountants, so it said that, the largest number of qualified chartered accountants come every year are coming from the Gujarat and this part of the country, right? The western part of country. So what we've understood, that a lot of accountants, chartered accountants, and not just chartered accountants, even engineers, IT professionals are moving into Gujarat from, nearby places like Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and, Chhattisgarh, all those, areas. Plus, what we have also done is we discussed about the foreign universities platform that we have created in the IFSC. So that is how we're building up for the talent in IFSC. When the Secretary Education in the government of Gujarat, was here. So it was mentioned that the kind of the number of institution from IITs to Gujarat universities, the universities that have in separate multiple cities. So there's large talent pool which is available, yeah. But then obviously you would always want to have somebody which is from Delhi or Mumbai, which is part of your core team. We want to hire them. So under the BATF regulation, we are not allowing generous movement of existing resources, but you can obviously get up to 20% of your resources into the IFSC entity. And on the work from home aspect, which you wanted to touch also. So work from home, is currently not so much of something, which is being appreciated because we really want people to come and experience and work here. So as we see, Bank of America has, more than, they have a capacity of 2,500, but yeah, currently more than 2,000 people are working here. And work from home is something, which they are also not, appreciating internally. And on the chartered accountant side, PwC, was mentioned in one of the slides, right? So they have a capacity of around 150 people working. And these two institutions aside, as a regulator, we are, in our office, we have more than 150 people working, and everybody coming from from Mumbai, Delhi, especially because we have got talent from our senior leadership, comes from RBI, from SEBI, from IRDAI. People come from Government of India. Myself, I come from the Ministry of Finance. So people are moving in, and and as you come here, you experience 6 to 8 months, you see your the balance, the traffic, which you have to deal with in general. So what we have seen, once there is a resistance, yeah, initially, but yeah, once people move in, they find it a resistant to move out. So that's the kind of experience that we have had. And work from home, from a regulator side or from the government side, we are generally not very appreciative of yeah, but yeah, obviously your promoters or your key resources can be sitting out of the IFSC, can be away from IFSC, because obviously you may want to market, get more businesses. So all those things are permitted, but per se, operational guy, working from home, that is something I am coming out very clearly, is not much appreciated. Yeah.
No, appreciated. This is what we wanted to hear as well. So absolutely. In terms of Himanshu ji, when even I visited 3 years back, a lot of infrastructure was getting built up. Even today, I believe a lot of development has already happened, but there is always a shortage of space, which is in the GIFT City. So, but there are developers who are providing office space on lease, and then later on they can go to the, once the company is set up and everything is done, they can go to the larger space as and when it is available. But the lease rental are getting very high in the GIFT City in Gandhinagar as compared to even Ahmedabad. So how a chartered accountant firm, a small or medium-sized firm, then cater that kind of a part, wanted to set up PwC and EY, these are very big firms, so they can definitely afford those costs. But a small and medium-sized chartered accountant firm, if they want to move, let's say from Mumbai or from smaller tier 3 cities like Pune or Baroda, how they will cater these kind of significant costs, which are almost approximately equivalent to getting Mumbai or Pune locations.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to clarify, we always give those names because, those are generally known names. But we have more than 80 firms, not all of them are, like big fours, big tens. Not everybody, can come in those categories, but we have more than 80 firms, around 90 firms, which, are of various shapes and sizes. A few have only 3 or 4 people working here. A few have hundreds of people working here. These are the only names which we give, just, because you can relate. Right, if you are from Gujarat, you may know CNK Khanwala is some company which is a firm in
There are law firms as well.
yeah, Artist Consulting is from Ahmedabad, so a lot of firms which are local firms, just from Ahmedabad. I'm saying, I'm not talking even about Delhi. So there are firms from Mumbai, Delhi, law firms also which have moved in and they have their presence here. So that piece aside, so there is some value proposition why people come here. So that is one thing. But yeah, on the real estate side, that's a problem. I think it's a good problem to have, that there's a lot of demand in IFSC. But yeah, we really want to solve that problem because you cannot pay the kind of rent which can be expected at times. So there is so if you have visited 3 years back, I would recommend you to visit now and see the number of buildings that have come up, and just drive around the city and see the number of constructions which I know. So I when I came here 5 years back around, so the kind of city I used to see and the kind of city I see now. So we'll sometimes in some presentation we'll push those pictures 2020 and 2020,
that would be great.
2017, 2025, 2022, and all those pictures, and then you will understand the kind of development which is picked up, because obviously there's a demand, there are rental yields, so developers are also very quick and moving in, and we are seeing buildings coming up, large buildings, tall buildings like 35 floors buildings coming up, one and a half years available for rentals or for supply. So more than 30 buildings are under construction right now. Obviously it's a demand supply mismatch right now, but I think another a year or so we have another 7 to 10 buildings coming up, and that will bridge a lot of gap between the demand and supply. But also, yeah, in the meanwhile, what we have done is, we have allowed accelerator kind of a concept. So there are multiple accelerators which are available. You can take, number of chairs, or number of tables that, you may want initially. And then, as you also grow and, you get a proper office setup, you can move into those setups. So yeah, that's a story which is coming up, another 6 months, a year. So every time you come after 6 months, you will find, lease rentals, coming closer, or getting closer to your expectations. So yeah, you'll have to give that time at least. And on the small firms, I already mentioned, there are around 90 firms which are registered here, and see what we discussed earlier. So your revenues are in dollars. You can serve your global clients from here, and at the cost which Indian cost. Even being lease rental being higher side, it's still Indian cost, which is having an impact. So a lot of firms are coming in here and providing those services. And one more important point, entities which are not in IFSC, still you have a lot of opportunities, working out of DTA area, getting newer clients, understanding this whole ecosystem, and how you can, pitch your existing clients, to avail services from IFSC, like basically, the banking part of it, the lending, the trade finance, all those simple, basic, the base fundamental businesses, those can be done from IFSC, using the already, institutions which are, you may already have relationship with those banks in IFSC already. Yeah.
Absolutely. There are ample of opportunities, working from the IFSC. Just couple of last questions, and then, we'll see if there are any further questions. Otherwise, we'll close the session. So in terms of the schools, I believe so that there are foreign schools or Indian schools are also willing to set up in the IFSC GIFT City. So are there any specific criterias for the schools to set up?
So schools, I'm from IFSC, so officially I'm only part of the IFSC zone, and the business which are regulated by IFSCA as a mandate that we have been given. But there is one school, there is one hospital, one school, I'll name it. It's Jamnabai Nursery School. If you're aware of a school in Juhu, which is JNS school in Mumbai. So that's a school which is up here for last long, it's been long journey for this school. They have already have multiple batches which have cleared from this school. And so that's one school right now here in the GIFT City. But yeah, in the periphery, we have a lot of schools like, we have a school like a DPS, which is very, close proximity. We have Divine Child School. There are St. Xavier's, so Gandhinagar, if you just come to GIFT City, if you enter from any direction, you'll find, international, the institutions like GNLUs, PDPUs, the IITs, some research institutions, biotech university within IFS, within the GIFT City, not in the IFSC, within the GIFT City. But yeah, if you're talking about secondary or primary schools, yeah, there is only one right now. But we expect many more to come, because the kind of demand that school has, and the admission closes very quickly. I can't say, how to get licensed for, undertaking a school business from IFSC or rather from the GIFT City. That's a very separate discussion, and I think a separate team can talk to you, or you can reach out to in the GIFT City Company Limited, which is the master developer for the GIFT City.
Sure, absolutely. Just last question. Is it possible to set up the data centers? As you are aware, the software companies have very huge data centers in the part of the country or maybe outside of the country. So if any foreign company, let's say, like Google or Microsoft, these kind of company would like to set up any data centers in the GIFT City, is that first of all possible? And if yes, what are the benefits available to them in addition to the usual tax benefits for which you have already spoken?
Again, so data center would be more of a DTA business, not an international financial services center business, because we don't regulate such category of business as yet, like schools. But yeah, there is already one data center within the IFSC right now, within the within the DTA side of the GIFT City. And again, so that is something beyond the scope of what IFSC does. But there is one data center. You can always reach out to the GIFT City Company Limited, which is master developer for this area of around 900 or 886 acres. And I think they will be able to help you. But yeah, there is an experience of having a data center within IFSC. It was a tier 4 data center. When it was launched at that point of time, it was the most advanced data center in the whole of the country. So there is possibility. I think it's better to reach out to the GIFT City Company Limited.
Sure. So as you mentioned, the obviously the IT companies, they cannot set up, but the BFSI sector of the IT company can set up the data center, right? Is that possible?
Data center per se is not permitted as an activity. That is what I understand. But what we are permitted is something called TechFin. So companies which are dealing with financial services entities whose clients are financial services, and those are in foreign jurisdictions. So those kind of entities can set up in IFSC, but I'm not really sure about having a data center because data center for your own unit which you're setting up in IFSC may be considered, but having a say Meta data center in IFSC, I think that is something, or maybe Citibank's data center in IFSC, I think that is something which may not be permitted, but I'll also have to check about it. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
One last question which has just come. So are the sustainability or ESG funds really picking up across the globe? That is a question. But I would say, is there any opportunity for the sustainability or ESG funds to be set up in the IFSC GIFT City also? And how do you see that approach? Because across the globe, these things are coming up and very quickly, and it is becoming a reality that every other research and the organizations are coming up with ESG funds as well. How do you see that in your experience and views?
Yeah. So what we have understood that, it's a very important area, and it's a really relevant area also. So currently what we have done is in multiple areas that we regulate, I already covered in one of the slides very briefly about this area, that we have ESG labeled products in IFSC, like funds in IFSC, like bonds which are issued on or listed on the IFSC exchanges. And also we have mandated our banks to perform 5% of the lending in this segment. So that's how we have allowed and permitted. And also on the fund side, I'm just repeating what I stated earlier, that on the fund side we have already exempted the fees which is applicable otherwise for a fund which is launched, if it is in this category of ESG or green labeled. So that's from our side. But yeah, whether it is picking up or it will pick up is something the investors and the business has to decide. But what as a platform or the IFSC we allow kind of setting up that category of funds, because eventually it's investor who has to pull in monies or invest monies, and it's the target entity which is really wanting to gain that money in that labeled category. So yeah, so that is something is a global phenomena. I think somebody who is really expert into this segment should speak. But yeah, as a regulator we are permitted about it.
Great. Absolutely delighted, Himanshu bhai, you have shared your experience, and even to Akshat ji. On behalf of everyone present here, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished speakers, Himanshu bhai and Akshat ji, for their insightful presentation. I think, Himanshu bhai, your expertise, your thought leadership, and the entire value propositions toward the IFSC Gift City is truly encouraging. And I am very sure that all the members of the Chartered Accountants have enriched their understanding about the IFSC Gift City, the opportunities available, and what are the criteria and the eminent tax benefits which are available in the IFSC Gift City. The knowledge which you have shared today undoubtedly is going to impact all of us as a members of Chartered Accountant, and we are deeply appreciative for the time and efforts you have dedicated to being with us. And we are honored to have you for this entire global Udan web series on the topic today. Once again, thank you so much for your inspiring presentation.
Yeah, so before we sign off, just as a regulator and as a IFSC center, we have been collaborating very deeply with the ICAI, and a lot of ICAI events are being done out of IFSC, and like these webinars, and I think there are a lot of conferences which happen, and even in the WOFA IFSC was present, and it was one of the important supporter for the WOFA. So I request, and I invite all the members who want to be present or visit IFSC. Please do visit IFSC, and if you have any queries, do post to us on our email IDs. Our email IDs are available on our website, and including personal email IDs are available. Official personal email IDs are available on the website. So we'll be happy to respond to all your queries and interact further deeply on specific subjects that you may be working upon with your clients.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, Himanshu bhai, and I think Akshat is not here, but to him also. And thank you for making this event a memorable one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So we log off for the today. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining this presentation.
Recording stopped.